Welcome back in another episode of Captain and Madden Show. Trudging through our late summer specialty programming here for you. The Great Debates continue. Second episode of The Great Debates. My name is Mike Madden on this side. Captain Michael Corby on the other side. Captain, have you calmed down from that last week where we really went at it over fictional landlords?
I did a little mental, I went on a little shopping spree, went out, bought myself a leisure suit, got myself a nice little handkerchief, leopard print shirt with the wide open collar, so I'm ready to rock the Pool Ave this weekend.
Okay, wonderful. What a scene you would make. But yes, as proven in the last episode, usually the show does not get contentious back and forth, but I think this is a fun way to spice things up for us for a few weeks, ending our summer with a bit of a spicy turn with these debate episodes. And I think this week it's very New York sports oriented, and it's another debate that you've heard experts, journalists, pundits fight back and forth over during the history of two storied franchises in the very turbulent 1980s. This debate will be point counterpoint on New York first baseman in baseball, in particular Don Mattingly on the Yankee side of the diamond, and Keith Hernandez representing the New York Mets. So before we even get started in our debate, and I know I just checked in with you to make sure that you had your fill of the arguments on that side. Just to kind of take a deep breath before we start this one. Let's make sure that this is a good, clean fight, right? And make sure that no blood is spilled.
No kidney punches. No hitting below the belt.
Yes. This is an exhibition, much like Rocky IV. This is an exhibition fight.
Oh, let's hope this one ends a lot better.
Well, as long as a mustached man doesn't die at the end of this, we're going to be fine.
Yes, that's.
We're not at the end of this, but in the middle of this one. You know what I mean?
And Stallone is not just standing there with a towel in his hand,
just holding that towel up, and
throw the damn towel.
Throw the damn towel. That corner crew was really they were on one that day, with Paulie at ringside as well to collect spit in a bucket. Maybe they should have focused on training a little bit more instead of photo opportunities. Let's just let's save that for a future debate and trudge on here. So I'm going to let you kick things off. The last episode I was able to argue for my landlord first, and this week I will let you take the reins and begin your notes and your accolades for one Don Mattingly.
So this is as WFAN as it gets for our podcast. The Donnie Baseball versus Keith Hernandez debate. Mm-hmm. Look, I'll be as transparent as I can. I think both of these players were very good baseball players. I don't think either of them are Hall of Fame. My argument would be maybe Donnie was a little bit... he was on his way to becoming a Hall of Fame baseball player. Unfortunately, an injury to his back kind of hampered the last so many years of his career. If he did not have... That's kind of one of the things that kind of sucks about doing a debate between the two of them, is that there is this whole what if on the side of Don Mattingly. What if he didn't get hurt? What if he played for better teams? What if the Yankee organization was ran like it was under Gene Michael for the majority of his career rather than the last couple of years. But with that said, even with the what if around Donnie, I'm going to try to compare the two men and who I think was a better player or who I would rather have on a team and go forth there. Both men, excellent fielders. My argument for on the side of Donnie would be Donnie was a outfielder in the minors who was called up as an outfielder and was converted to a first baseman in the majors, rather than Keith, who is a first baseman in the minors and came up in his natural position. So Donnie worked his ass off, making himself into a Gold Glove first baseman. Yes, Keith won 11 Gold Gloves. Mattingly only won 9. Keith also played 18 seasons in the majors. Donnie only got to play 13. Of those 13, 2 of them were interrupted by work stoppages. So that's another thing that you kind of have to add into. Keith only had, I think, in 81, there was a work stoppage. I forget how many games it was, but the work stoppage ended both the 94 season for Donnie, who Yankees did have the best record in the American League, and then the beginning of the 95, which unfortunately was Donnie's last year. So I guess in the side-by-side, Keith he has more games played. He has more plate appearances because he played longer. He has roughly about 30 hits more for his career. Donnie has more career home runs. He has about 20 more RBIs. Here's a intriguing statistic. Donnie was 14 stolen bases, 9 caught stealing. Keith Hernandez, 98 stolen bases with 63 caught stealing. I guess playing for the St. Louis Cardinals, I guess he was considered a running first baseman. Mattingly has a better career batting average, 307 to 296. Slugging and Keith has a little bit better on base percentage. Slugging and OPS are pretty close. I don't know what this OPS plus, but it's basically the same. The biggest differences, I guess, would be that Keith won a World Series with the Cardinals and one with the Mets, where Donnie unfortunately only got to take one trip to the playoffs. Donnie was an All-Star 6 times, Keith 5. They both won an MVP. They both won a batting title. Although I will argue that in the 86 season, I think Mattingly got robbed of both a batting title and an MVP. In 86, he played 162 games, had career best 238 hits, 53 doubles, and was pretty much neck and neck with Wade Boggs for the batting title. Mattingly actually, since he played 162 games, played the final 4 games in Boston, while Boggs, because the Red Sox had already clinched the division, sat out the last 4 games with an apparent hamstring injury. So it came to the last day. Donnie had to go 6 for 6. They batted him leadoff, and at the point that he was 3 for 3, all of a sudden Boggs was up with a bat in his hand and warming up, waiting to get into the game just in case. If Donnie went 4 for 4 or 5 for 5, I'm sure Boggs would have came in as a pinch hitter. But anyway, they gave the MVP to Clemens, which I'm completely against giving a starting pitcher an MVP award, compared to a guy who set career best and Yankee records for hits, for doubles, and led the league that year in total bases. But so in my mind, Donnie should have won back-to-back in 85 and 86. Mattingly had 3 seasons with 200 hits. His career high was 238. Keith only had one 200 hit season. Mattingly had seven seasons with the 300 average. Keith had six. And in 85 and 86, Donnie led the league in total bases, which I think I just said. Yes, Mattingly had the advantage of playing with the short porch, but it wasn't like he was in Colorado or where he hit all of his homers or home runs at Yankee Stadium. His split is pretty close out of the 222 home runs, both are on the road and away. In 13 seasons, Donnie had a walk ratio of 588 walks to 444 strikeouts, never striking out more than 50 times in the season. Keats was 1071 to 1,012 strikeouts. He had one season where he struck out over 100 times, and he had two where he had over 80 strikeouts. So Mattingly, I think, was a better contact hitter than Keith. So just statistically, they're very close. Obviously, Keith played a little bit longer than Donnie. And, basically the argument always comes down to is that from 84 to 89, Donnie was probably not only the best hitter in the game, but was probably considered one of the best players in the game. Because if you added in his fielding with his hitting, I don't think Keith was ever considered the best in the game overall. Or, yes, he was always considered a very good defensive first baseman. But there was never any really talk about, Keith is on his way to a Hall of Fame career, where Mattingly was on his way there until, unfortunately, the back went. And the last 5 years of his career, he just wasn't the same player. Mm-hmm. So, in my mind, yes, there is a lot of what if with Donnie, and you can't. Sometimes people will say, well, what ifs are nice, but they're not exactly what happened. But I still think when you're looking side by side, the things that Keith kind of leads in or have to do a lot more with longevity than the quality of a ball player, and Mattingly's always gets hampered by his injuries. So overall, I just think Donnie was a better baseball player. And not to say that Keith was a bad, like I said, this isn't going to be me like picking on Keith Hernandez. Like, I think Keith Hernandez was a very good ball player. I love him as an announcer with the Mets. I as being a Yankee fan, I will say the Mets broadcasting booth is way better than the Yankees broadcasting booth. Ron, Gary, and Keith are, in my mind, the best in the business. But as ball players, I'll take Donnie over Keith.
Okay, all right. Now it's my turn because that was a lot of Baseball Reference. Shout out to Baseball Reference for a lot of stats. I'm not gonna read all the stats. I will hit the highlights of Keith's playing career. He did play for 16 seasons, so not as many. Came up in 1974, retired in 1990. He too was riddled with injuries at the end of his career. He had a lot of stints, and he had a lot of issues with his knees and his hamstrings in 1988. That led to them having to replace him in more times than not, but he still made it back into the lineup for postseason. That'll be a phrase, postseason. That'll be one that I'll bring up a lot with Keith Hernandez's career. But in addition to that, the 89 season was not the most terrific for the Mets, and Keith, again, had to deal with a lot of injuries, so he spent a lot of time off the field. Then got traded to the Cleveland Indians at the end of his career, and just, basically was a shell of his former self at the end of his career. So the debate of Keith was so healthy and just decided to retire, that's, I appreciate that you brought up Mattingly's injuries a lot, and that was the end of his career. But let's be honest. Do you think Mattingly was really playing for another, 10 years? At most, even if he didn't have, that thrashed back, he probably would have played for, 4 more seasons, and they would have figured out a way to phase him out. But before...
He retired at the age of 34.
Okay, all right. But so 4 more... He would have played 4 more years. That's just the way that it goes. So longevity, hey, he got, it's not like he was knocked down in the twilight of his career when he was 28 years old and you're singing the guy's praises of what could have been. I think the argument of his legacy in baseball would have been more hampered if he stayed on the field longer, because he would have become more broken down, more shell of himself, more expendable. Keith Hernandez, as a Cardinal, as a Met, pretty much played at a high level for the duration of his run. This is the main thing about Hernandez that really gets overlooked is he almost single-handedly, with the trade that he made, and by his own admission, he was not enamored with coming to New York. But once he got here, he basically worked with management and worked with the general manager to get reassured that if he came in and he did the Keith Hernandez thing that he was expected to do, he was going to turn around the franchise and he was going to become basically the first building block of what ended up being a team that made the playoffs 2 more times in the 80s. In a tough division where your rival, when you move to the Mets, is the team that traded you away, and they traded you away because they thought you were expendable in 1983, 1 year after you... Was it 1 year after? Because he won a World Series with... So that was 82, right?
It's your job to look up.
They won the World Series in 82, beating the Milwaukee Brewers. So he wins a world title with the St. Louis Cardinals. Then the next year he gets traded because Whitey Herzog doesn't like his attitude, and Keith Hernandez isn't expected to be the guy that's stealing 60 bases. He is a contact hitter and wants to get the ball in play, and he wants to play a Gold Glove first base. And Whitey Herzog was like, "We don't need you on this team. We're going to get younger. We're going to do this." And by get younger, they're casting off a 30-year-old or 31-year-old Keith Hernandez at the time, which again is kind of silly and preposterous, but one man's mistake becomes the centerpiece and eventually the captain of the New York Mets in the middle to late part of that decade, where again, you won a world championship with the Mets 4 years after you won your first world title with the St. Louis Cardinals, and then went to the playoffs again in 1988. So that's 3 times in the playoffs. The early part of his career, Hernandez was a co-MVP in 1979. So although Mattingly did win an MVP, and it's a good argument that he should have been the MVP in 86, Keith Hernandez was gracious enough to be a co-MVP with Dave Parker and kind of share in the satisfaction of being tied for the best player in the National League that year with Dave Parker, a man who eventually made the Hall of Fame. So I think those are good vibes for Keith, because he's a charitable person. The 11 Gold Gloves that's no joke. The beginning of that obviously is with an incredibly talented St. Louis Cardinals organization that had a lot of young, hungry ball players that looked to Hernandez as a leader. Even in his younger playing days, he was considered a leader. I believe Mattingly in the same way. They're both considered to be early leaders for their team. But then Keith continued to win Gold Gloves as a Met, extending his streak at that time to 11 Gold Gloves, which is a big metric. And that was one of the things I think you kind of glazed over it in your argument that Don Mattingly was considered all around the best ball player in baseball for a 2-year stretch, 3-year stretch, and that certainly is worth taking into account. But when we're going specifically to the quintessential first baseman in Major League Baseball, I think Keith Hernandez was a quintessential first baseman in Major League Baseball for a longer period of time, for close to upwards of 5 or 6 years, maybe even more. He was considered to be the best defensive first baseman, and not too shabby as an offensive first baseman as well. Close to 300 batting average for his career. He's not a guy with pop, but he hit clutch home runs. He could drive in runs. He had a little bit of speed, which is true, but he had the guts to extend himself out and try and steal those bases on a team that wasn't really known as a stolen base machine in the New York Mets. And again, something that he got swept away from the Cardinals because he wasn't considered to be aggressive on the base pads. Then he goes to the Mets and does what Whitey Herzog thought he wouldn't do, which is tremendous. Post-playing career, he's a Hall of Famer in both of the organizations that he played for, St. Louis Cardinals, New York Mets. He's got his number retired as a New York Met, which is, listen, I understand that the Yankees love to retire jerseys, and they've got a lot hanging up in Monument Park. It's not as many numbers retired for the Mets, so it takes a special ball player and a special franchise player to get your number retired. So as a former captain, he certainly deserves that honor. And as a guy who was basically the first domino to fall when you ramped up to one of the most successful teams, a team that you talk about decades after the fact, is that 1986 New York Mets. Dare I say, find me a team that Mattingly played for that you remember more than you remember the 1986 New York Mets. He did make the playoffs. I understand that he could have made more playoffs if his body hadn't broken down. But, listen, you got to deal with injuries at the end of your career. So Hernandez dealt with it too, but he already front-loaded, and when he came aboard, he made his franchise better. When Mattingly came aboard the Yankees, I think he helped, but he didn't push them over the top. And he didn't motivate his teammates enough to push them over the top. Maybe they were a bit happy with their contracts and didn't want to, overachieve, or maybe he didn't get involved with the farm system and say, hey, bring up these younger pitchers, or why are we trading for main event bats when we have a mediocre pitching staff? You kind of got to, when you're a leader and a captain, you kind of have to do that. And I think Hernandez showed that he was more of an organizational team player than just an on-the-field team player. So, and then you mentioned, obviously, he's had a stellar career as a color commentator, one of the men on the best broadcast booth in all of, dare I say, all of Major League Sports. It's hard to debate them in baseball, because every critic will tell you that SNY booth is the best in baseball. But I think I could put them up against a lot of booths around the rest of sports and have a hard time finding 3 more entertaining gentlemen. And Keith is he's the lighthearted one. He's the one that they can joke with a little bit more, but he also lends a lot of insight into how the game was played in his day, as opposed to what it is played currently. I understand Mattingly has had more of success as a coach and eventually as a manager. So kudos to him for taking that mentor role and applying it on the field. Keith, Keith has a little bit more swagger, so he's going to be a booth guy. That's the way that retirement goes. My last point that I just want to make, I don't want to, again, I don't want to really go stat heavy with this, but a little bit of the detraction. Of course, somebody will always say that Keith Hernandez was involved with drugs. Listen, there was a lot of dudes doing cocaine and greenies in the 80s, and Major League Baseball wanted to make a few scapegoats and hold a few people accountable. He's not shy about smoking cigarettes and doing crossword puzzles in the dugout during games. Listen, if you step out when you're needed on the field and you're ready to roll, and you bring your heart into it, you can have a heater every once in a while. And I think the womanizing aspect of him is blown out of proportion based on that Seinfeld episode, and it's not as prolific as you would think it would be. I cede the rest of my time.
So he was successful and a leader in St. Louis, but they decided to trade him. Probably had to do more with the fact that he was a cokehead than that he wasn't a leader or wasn't.
It was Lonnie Smith's cocaine.
So they trade him to the Mets in '84, and apparently once Keith got there, that
83.
was it. Everything.
83.
I thought he got there in '84. Okay, he got there in '83, which would have been Mattingly's rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets there in '83, and magically everything just changed in the organization.
Well, it wasn't magic. It wasn't magically. In '84 they brought up Strawberry.
I think I remain quiet during your time.
Okay, all right. Well, this is the debate portion.
Maybe it had to do more with when Gary Carter got there than it was.
He got there in '85.
Keith got there a little bit before Gary, and they didn't really win anything. So they won in '86. So the Mets win in '86. Now you could say for both teams that if we're under the current format, the Mets would have went to the playoffs a lot more, and so would have the Yankees, and in wild cards and whatever, playing games and everything that MLB has done since both of them have retired. So they win the World Series in '86, one of the notorious teams because not only were they really good, but they're also known for being a bunch of scumbags and starting fights, and basically won because they had the best pitching staff in the majors. 1 through 5, those guys were ridiculous that year.
Okay.
Something Mattingly never had in his career. He was playing behind Joe and Phil Niekro and Tommy John. So yeah, the Yankee organization was in a shit situation. They had good fielding players, but they had no pitching, where the Mets had tons of pitching. And the great leader, what did the great leader that Keith Hernandez was do the year after they won the World Series? He punches the Mets' best player in the face at the team photo op at spring training the following year. Gets into a fight. Now, to me, that's got captain written all over it.
He didn't become the captain until I think it was '88. But
poor Keith, the last so many years, couldn't get on the field because his knees and his hamstrings. Maybe it was because he was too busy smoking heaters and wasn't taking care of himself. Whereas Mattingly, known as Donnie Baseball, who was known to get to the park at 12 o'clock on days that they had a game at 7 o'clock, maybe that's how he converted himself from an outfielder to a Gold Glove winning first baseman. And while he was not for 1 year or 2 years, for 6 years, considered the best hitter in baseball, which Keith Hernandez was never considered the best hitter in baseball. Okay,
but being the best fielding first baseman isn't that's you're sneezing
Donnie
at that.
Won 9. Donnie, an outfielder, converted into a first baseman.
Did he win a Gold Glove in the outfield? Did he win a Gold Glove in the outfield?
No, because he only played half a season in the majors as an
so,
outfielder. But he was in the minor leagues. He was a career outfielder.
But we're looking at first base.
So Keith,
11 is more than 9.
Fielding, right.
That's math.
18's more than 13.
Yeah. Okay. He had a longer career.
So Keith is this great fielding first baseman who won 2 more Gold Gloves than Donnie, who was once an outfielder who converted himself.
He only played in the outfield in 1 season. You're making it seem like he spent half of his career in the outfield. He played 1 season in the outfield, and that was his call-up season. That's because they didn't figure out that he could be a first baseman. And once they did, he found his groove, and he became an exceptional first baseman. I never said that he was an exceptional first baseman, but he didn't accumulate the Gold Gloves over his career that Keith Hernandez did. That's just math.
He's got 2 less. He's got
that's
two
less
less.
though.
He played 5 less year.
Okay, but it's
5
less.
less years.
That's I'm not taking anything away from his batting stats. I'm not saying that like Mattingly's batting stats are like erasable. You're basically saying that like we should take 2 Gold Gloves off of Keith Hernandez's record because Don Mattingly spent a month in the outfield.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that everyone talks. Keith was such this defensive prowess at first base. So was Donnie.
But there were so many more people that learned how to play first base and adapted into Keith Hernandez's style at first base, as opposed to people that say that like Don Mattingly was their template at first base. If Don Mattingly was your template, he was your template at the plate. His patience and his eye and his ability to power the ball over the right field wall it's prolific. He had a great run in, what was it, 87 with the consecutive home runs in that particular season. Like I'm not taking that away, but you're basically dismissing Keith Hernandez as he barely won these Gold Gloves and he wasn't. I didn't say he wasn't an important person in the history of baseball because Don Mattingly played like a month and a half in the outfield. And it's like, well, he had to learn. It's like, dude, he didn't have to learn. I guarantee he played in the minor leagues at first base. Didn't he play third base too in the minors?
No, he played third base 1 game in the majors.
Okay, so you figured out first base, and then you won 6 Gold Gloves or 9 Gold Gloves. That's great. That's very impressive. That's terrific. The guy that won 11 in a row in basically like the heart of his career and basically like the best years of his career, I think that's pretty impressive, to say the least.
It is.
There's more people that won for a longer period of time and that revolutionized their particular position, but it's hard to argue that like at that moment in that particular decade of the 1980s, fielding first baseman line up behind Keith.
The argument
if
always is
Mattingly's
between
number 2 behind
Mattingly
him,
and Keith. The argument between always where everyone who's pro Keith always sits there and says, well, Keith was a much better fielding first baseman than Don. And make it out that, like, Keith was the Ozzie Smith of first base.
Yeah.
He played more seasons than Donnie and only won 2 more Gold Gloves. It's not like Keith won 18 Gold Gloves and Mattingly won 9, where you sit there and say, oh, shit, man, the dude won, he won 11 Gold Gloves, which is impressive. It's not. I'm not saying it's not. But everyone makes this thing out that that Keith was he was 2 Gold Gloves better than Donnie, and played 5 more years than him.
Okay.
So,
I think in my opinion, and you did also dismiss the whole like team leader and catalyst for change in the Mets organization.
No, I did not.
You're saying that he's smoking heaters like down in the dugout, and he's got a reputation as like he might have done drugs in St. Louis.
He had a reputation of being very surly. Okay, so he was a team leader. He was a team leader on the one team, on the 1 year that they won a World Series. He was also the team leader on the year that they collapsed in '87 and in '88 when they lost to the underdog Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, but at least they got to the playoffs.
So Donnie later in his career
wasn't the team leader at that point. Like there were other people that had come up. Mattingly's just hanging on and Mattingly is more of a part-time player when they make the playoffs in '95, right?
No, he was a full-time first base.
He was still full-time first base, but look around the rest of that lineup. Yes. There were a lot of younger, hungrier guys that they either brought up to their system.
Who he mentored. He mentored Jeter when he was up in '95. He mentored Andy Pettit. He mentored Mariano Rivera. He mentored Bernie Williams with the 3 years that he played with them. Mm-hmm. And those guys go on to win a dynasty.
Okay.
Not one. Guess what? A lot of people remember that 1998 team a lot more than the '86 team. And Donnie was a mentor to all those guys. Donnie taught Jeter how to be a leader.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So
I think Keith Hernandez
it's hard to be a leader when you got animals like Jesse Barfield and Mel Hall bringing tiger cubs into the into the goddamn clubhouse. By the way, that was the year Mattingly, the 90 year that they did the documentary on, was the year that Mattingly played 52 games and wasn't in the locker room for 100 games.
Well,
and all hell breaks loose the 1 year he's not there. I don't think that's a coincidence.
So Keith Hernandez played 75 games in 1989. And then the Mets dropped him at that point because he was riddled with injuries too. So again, you got guys that are that sort of had issues with injuries late in their careers. Hernandez happened to be a little bit more prolific in the beginning part of his career, but I think he more than proved himself as somebody who was able to help revive a franchise. And whether it was for one season or whether it wasn't, they have a world title under his leadership or his co-leadership. Whoever you want to share, you want to say Gary Carter is just as important with it, that's all well and good. But under his co-leadership of him and another veteran, Gary Carter, they still won that world championship. And they turned that organization around in a 3-year period. And it took Mattingly 12 years for them to sniff the playoffs. Sure, the rest of the legacy players that picked up the scraps after he was done, all credit should go to Mattingly for prepping those guys to play like champions and to win titles as quickly as possible. And the organization went on a prolific run. But to me, an organization that's on its ass, it's on its ass in 1982, the Mets, and they failed to spark it by bringing in George Foster, and they were still sub 500 and mediocre. Hernandez comes at trade deadline in 83, doesn't light anything on fire, but in the offseason of 84, he's talking to the organization. He's saying, hey, you have these great young players in the minors. We saw what Strawberry could do. He's got to be your everyday third base right fielder. We have all this young talent that you brought into the league and you're basically platooning them. Start giving them regular day-to-day positions, and you have this phenom, this 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid that's going to set the world on fire and win a Cy Young next year. Let's get him up at some point in 84. They finished in second place to a Cubs team that literally was built for world championships and failed. But the Mets were right on their heels all through that summer. So, yeah, 86 is wonderful. It's fantastic. The building block started in 84, and he's readily part of it. They added Carter in 85. They battled the Cardinals all year long in 85 and went to the last weekend where if that weekend series is at Shea Stadium, they might have had a little bit better chance, but, they're playing in St. Louis. Home field advantage. Whitey ball was at its peak, and it didn't work out for them. And guess what? They got right back on the horse in 86. Yeah, did it fall off because the organization decided to get rid of people that were assets in 87? And Keith was more or less compliant in saying we've got enough young people that can come up, and we have enough veteran presence here. And what he wasn't prepared for was stardom was going to hit these young players a little bit too quickly towards the end of that decade, and they were going to have a mess on their hands. So if you want to talk, all right, he mentored more difficult people that ended up being in a difficult spot for their career than Mattingly was, but he won a world title with the people around him and harnessing their talent at the beginning of their career.
So if you're going to say that Hernandez was a leader, that he was the first building block for their dynasty, and he was.
I didn't say dynasty. He was the first building block to turn the organization around.
Okay, so a leader who is a recovered drug addict.
Here we go again.
Sat there and watched the two biggest stars in the game, the two biggest centerpieces for that organization, burn to the ground. Okay. Never did anything.
All right, we're hanging that on Keith only. Keith gave him the drugs, right?
So Keith, who had to deal with Adner Doubleday and the Wilpons, who were very accommodating and were trying to do whatever they could to. You want to bring up Dykstra? We'll bring up Dykstra. While Mattingly is dealing with a wacko in Steinbrenner, who is constantly signing guys that are way past their prime, trading all their young players that they had that could have been building blocks. They could have used Doug Drabeck. They could have used Jose Rio.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys were traded away for guys who were way past their prime because George was a maniac and did not know how to run an organization.
Well,
it wasn't until George finally got kicked out of baseball that they bring in Buck, they bring in Gene Michael, and Mattingly is the captain of the team, and they start building their future. Unfortunately, Donnie left in '95 and never got to. If he would have been able to play a couple more seasons, he would have had a couple more World Series titles, and then I don't think this is a debate at all.
Then it wouldn't be a debate at all, and he would have had the Yankee way is to pat it with it's not what you do for the organization overall, it's what you do for the trophy room that makes everybody stand and deliver and clap. And yes, I understand that the argument is you're there to win championships, but I'm also interested in a player that had heart and that basically said, hey, if I'm going to come in here and you're going to fix it, I'm going to, help get involved, and I'm going to make sure that the right people are on this team at the right time. If Mattingly did that at the end of his career to benefit the organization in the long run, then applause. I like to think of Hernandez as a guy in the moment.
It wasn't like
that did that.
It wasn't like Keith signed with as a free agent. It's not like he had a lot of choices and said, "Oh, I want to go to the Mets."
He didn't. He absolutely didn't.
St. Louis wanted to get rid of him for a reason.
Because Whitey Herzog thought he was on cocaine all the time. Because he heard rumblings that he did cocaine when he wasn't playing baseball. And hey, I hate to break it to you, this is going to be a very sensitive topic, but there was a lot of people doing cocaine in and around not only baseball, but pro sports and everyday life in the early part of the 80s. The commissioner of baseball at the time just happened to have a hard-on for it because it came as a slap in the face to the audience that watched it, that were mostly young and impressionable kids, that they were like, hey, we have to crack down and we have to give suspensions to these players because their names are getting floated around at drug trials when people are going to prison for this, when we're really cracking down crime-wise on it. I've never said he's a Boy Scout. Don Mattingly's a beautiful Boy Scout who never got into any trouble or was at least smart enough to stay out of the limelight if he was, participating in anything, and good for him. But Whitey Herzog was at odds with Keith because of rumors that he heard, plus he wanted to go in a different direction and have a really speedy lineup, and Keith wasn't speedy enough for him. I hate to say it, it benefited the New York Mets a whole lot better when Keith was brought here, and he made an immediate impact on the team. A guy who he already co-MVP in 1979, and he was generous enough to share his MVP with Dave Parker. That's a selfless ball player. In my opinion, that's a selfless ball player.
That's nothing to do with being a selfless ball player. The writers vote, and it ends in a tie.
I heard that they went to both of them and said, you can have a runoff to find out who's going to be the sole MVP. And Keith was like, no, it's okay. I'll share. Yeah, he's a sharing man. Superior. He has a better mustache than Mattingly. He wasn't made a fool of in a Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns kept telling him to shave his mutton chop sideburns, which is also, a reason why, you're under the authoritarian George Steinbrenner for all of your career, and he's trying to trade you in 1990 because he's realizing that you're starting to become a liability because physically you can't stay with it. Now, George Steinbrenner is a maniac and made the wrong decisions, but if Mattingly is the true leader, as I feel Hernandez was, he probably would have pulled George aside and said, hey, listen, let's collaborate on this, and let's get the organization in the headlines that the Mets are in, and the Mets are in those headlines in the mid to late 80s.
So you think Donnie was like perfectly fine with like when Steinbrenner decided I'm going to trade the greatest leadoff hitter in the history of baseball for Luis Polonia, Greg Cadaret, and Eric Plunk. You think Mattingly was totally like, that's a good move?
No, I don't think he. I don't think he. I don't think he stood up for that.
When they decided to just trade Dave Winfield, who the owner had been followed and was trying to get him.
I don't think he agreed with that.
Anaheim.
That's the problem that
Donnie
I have.
was like, perfectly good move.
If he's a real leader and a real captain, which he eventually ended up being,
which he spoke out against, saying these. I don't know what's going on with this. We're trading guys. We're doing all this stuff.
Pulled him aside and talked to the manager.
I don't know if you ever remember the headline, Mount St. Mattingly finally erupts.
Okay.
When he had enough of it, and he blasted George in the papers for trading for all these young players and for trading all the established guys that they had for not really the best in return. Mike Witt. You traded Dave Winfield and got Mike Witt back.
Yeah. No, they made bad deals, but I feel like if he had that say, and I think he had that, if he did have the influence that he, gets a lot of credit for, they wouldn't have made those mistakes.
Mattingly didn't have a chance to share his MVP that he won because he won it unanimously. So there was nobody else he could share it with because it didn't finish in a tie. They didn't come to him and say, "Oh, like, do you want to have a runoff or do you want to compare?" Because he won it unanimously because he was that much better than everybody else that in '85. He didn't have to share an MVP.
I like people who share.
Okay.
I like
You know what else, Keith? You know what else Keith liked to share? His mirror with lots of cocaine on it.
Okay, good. Wow, listen.
And some of the ladies that he would meet on the road.
Mm-hmm. Again, completely blown out of proportion. A lot of people get married three times.
He liked to share his cigarettes in the dugout.
He actually didn't. He just liked to have one to relax.
Selfish. He wouldn't let anybody else help him with his crossword puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because that's what I like. That's what I like my captain to be doing. Sitting on the bench doing a crossword puzzle.
He's not sitting on the bench doing a crossword puzzle. He was doing a crossword puzzle to relax himself before games.
Because he was coming down from his cocaine
to test his mind. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna get a lie detector test, and I'm gonna go into Don Mattingly's and be like, "Hey, let's talk about 1986 and 1987. You ever do cocaine?" And he'll be like, "No, I just drank milk." Listen,
he's from Evansville, Indiana.
Don't fool yourself. They have cocaine there too. They have meth there. That's for sure. He could have been a meth coyote, but he could have. He put
a lot
on his
of meth
sunglasses.
addicts could bat 352.
He put on his Oakley sunglasses and he just vibed with it, right? Because he was, he's prolific. I'm not saying that he's not a great player. I'm not saying that both guys are borderline Hall of Famers. And probably in this new era of reevaluating players, they're going to get a lot of looks. And there's a chance that the door gets open for both of them. Here's one thing I will say. I think Keith Hernandez has a much bigger likelihood of going into the Hall of Fame as a broadcaster than Don Mattingly has to go into the Hall of Fame as a manager. So, Let's look at that. Kind of a failure as a manager, but listen, he's a mentor. He mentored a lot of ball players.
What do you mean he was a failure as a manager?
Did he win a world championship?
No.
Doorstep.
He won Manager of the Year coaching the fucking Florida Marlins.
Listen.
He brought the Marlins to a playoff series. I think.
Listen. That's a tall task.
It's easy to be considered a baseball genius from the booth. It's a little bit harder to do it from the dugout, but we'll never know because Keith he'd rather be up in the booth.
Shows up at that cage every day to mentor ball players and talk to them, and tell them what he's going to talk about in his broadcast
at 5:00.
Okay, all right,
that's nice.
I think this is a stalemate.
Hey, you never know. Mattingly might win one as a batting instructor for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Okay. Hey, but he might. Yeah, that's good. Is the ring a little bit smaller for Does he get a batting donut for that? Like a gold batting donut? if they win a world championship?
I don't know. So if the Mets win, does Keith get a gold mic?
He should. He might deserve it.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe he gets a gold ashtray.
time will tell. I think he's given up smoking in his older age. I'll be honest with you. You know.
So I'm having a little. My memory's a little.
I feel like you hate Keith Hernandez.
I don't hate Keith Hernandez.
I feel like you do.
So remind me, Ken Oberkfell and Bob Horner.
Yeah.
Did either one of them lead the league in stolen bases for St. Louis Cardinals? Because that's who Whitey Herzog replaced Keith with, Ken Oberkfell and Bob Horner. I don't think either one of them were really. If he wanted to go in a more of a speed, I don't remember them either one of those guys. Maybe Keith wasn't so great in the locker room. I don't know.
Okay. Can I finish? Can I finish? Yeah, I don't like that comparison. Bob Horner was a power hitter. If you get guys on base and Bob Horner's hitting fourth in your lineup, Bob Horner's he's out there to blast and hit the ball over the wall. Ken Oberkfell, and was that the platoon, by the way? Bob Horner and Ken Oberkfell. Ken Oberkfell was more of a third baseman.
Well, Pendleton played.
Pendleton didn't come up. Pendleton didn't come up until 86.
I'm looking at the 84 roster. And he's the only one I can.
Tito
see
Landrum was probably first base because Tito Landrum was their first base and outfield in 85. Jack Clark came on in 85. Or 87 was
on the 84 team. And Tito Landrum is an outfielder on the 84 team. So, yeah, I don't.
By 85, one of those guys was in. Well, in
unless
87.
One of these other jabronis is. Maybe one of these other jabronis was lightning fast, and I don't. What position did Art Howe play?
Shortstop, third base. But he would have been a bench guy. You're talking on that team in 82 when they won the World Championship. Lonnie Smith is in the outfield. Willie McGee's in the outfield.
I'm not looking at the 82.
But that's the last full season that Hernandez played for the Cardinals. At some point after winning a World Championship, Whitey Herzog said, "I need this team to get younger, and I need this team to get faster because that's what they built their offense on. It was guys getting on base. It was singles and doubles hitters that were getting on base, and that was it. They were bipping and bopping and taking extra bases with that. Hernandez was a contact hitter, and he was a pretty damn good contact hitter for what he was. But he wasn't necessarily the standout on the base pads when it came to speed.
I'm sorry. It was David Green was their first baseman.
So David Green was probably 1 year into the league. He was probably a rookie, or at least like within the first 3 years of his career.
Let's see. I don't see anything about him being a stolen base king.
The stolen base kings came on in 85 when Vince Coleman came up out of their system. And Ozzie Smith started to steal bases. And Willie McGee was there, and he was winning batting titles and stealing bases. And Andy Van Slyke.
You're getting so mad. Why are you getting so mad?
They eventually built that. But the beginning of their build to what Whitey Herzog wanted to do started in 82, and he saw a brighter future for it in 83. And he said, I don't get along with Hernandez. We're not on the same page. He wants to, butt in a little bit too much, and I want to have control. I need to get him out of here, and we need to make our changes so that we can get back to the playoffs. And they got back to the playoffs won the world title in 85.
So Whitey Herzog treated his clutch fielding leader of his team in 1984 to one of their rivals in the Mets.
Yeah.
And because he wanted to go in a different direction. And didn't St. Louis wind up beating the Mets and winning a World Series?
Because they had already won the World Championship in 82 with a lot of the foundation pieces They took one piece out, and they had a whole bunch of other stuff in there.
Didn't the Cardinals make it back? Didn't the Cardinals make it back to the World Series in '87?
This isn't a debate about how many times the Cardinals played extremely well in the 80s. This is a debate about Keith Hernandez versus Don Mattingly.
I'm just saying.
Whitey Herzog took all of the powers that the Mets were trying to build, and he basically had a counter for it, and he didn't have a counter for it in '86. Threw in the towel in May and said, this team's going to win the division, and they might win the World Championship. Fuck us. We're not doing anything great. We're going to develop ball players so that we can kick the shit out of them in 1987, and he did exactly that. I'm not saying that that's wrong. The Mets were a dumb franchise and continue to be a dumb franchise on and off through the history of my life. What I am saying, though, is when Keith Hernandez came to the Mets, specifically came to the Mets, that started to change the fortune of the franchise more than any other player in that particular block of 84 to 1989 when he was a New York Met for regular season baseball. And the fact of the matter was, maybe he wasn't the most important guy on the team for the Mets. He was part of helping them create that team with what he saw in their organization and how he wanted to mentor these young players on the field.
So it was Keith who taught Darryl and Doc how to do blow?
Were they doing blow on the field?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. This is devolved into. I feel like I'm being trolled. This is nonsense. I don't like the way that this ended. Go have a glass of milk with Don Mattingly and tell me there isn't some skeleton in his closet. Oh boy, I'd love to sit here and dig a skeleton out of his closet, but I can't.
He's gonna be like
squeaky.
He's gonna be like, one time. I totally was a badass, and I grew my hair long.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and I pissed off my manager so much that he benched me because I wouldn't get my ponytail cut.
Stump Merrill, who used to take his sweaty socks and wring them out and then clean his teeth with them.
Yeah.
Told me to go get a haircut.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Fuck you. I said, fuck you, old man.
Yeah.
And next day I got a haircut.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a real badass in my time.
Yep.
And then Keith's going to be like, let me tell you about the time I did blow off a hooker's ass and then between the doubleheader in St. Louis.
Don Mattingly was about as edgy as a balloon. All right. Are we done with this? I don't like the way this one ended.
No?
No.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's hope we both live long enough that maybe one of us gets to go to a Cooperstown.
No, I don't want to see any of these guys in the Hall of Fame now. I don't think either of them belong there.
No, you said Keith was going there as a broadcaster.
As a broadcaster, yes. He'll go in as a broadcaster. And if he's going in as a broadcaster, he's bringing two partners with him. Again, he's an equitable person. The man shared his MVP trophy in 1979.
Oh, maybe he'll share his plaque. Maybe he'll share his plaque.
He will have to share his plaque, probably. Everybody goes in the
you know who he won't be sharing it with? Dave Parker.
Oh, come on. He's got his own plaque.
R.I.P. Cobra.
He already shared enough with Dave Parker. Probably shared some of his drugs with Dave Parker.
Boys are bopping.
Yeah. Another cigarette guy. Oh, cigarette guys can't do anything great in baseball? I don't know. Two of them went in the Hall of Fame this year. Dick Allen and Dave Parker didn't put their cigarettes down.
Just waiting for the Jim Leland Wing Hall of Fame.
Yeah, listen. Just make sure there's an ashtray.
Does that mean Lenny gets in for chewing tobacco?
No, that guy's a scumbag. That guy's a true scumbag. All right. This has been another riveting debate. I thank you for all your praise of the Lord and Savior himself, Donnie Baseball. May he, may his head not tilt too much when he's doing batting instruction, so his halo doesn't fall off. And let him,
he doesn't play for the Angels. He plays for the Blue Jays.
Let him guide the, that franchise that really built up his career, and he was prolific with for that run in the 80s. Let him get into that batting cage with them and teach them how to win a division. Oops, he's doing that with your opponents. Shit.
Oh, man. May all your Mets fans enjoy Keith Hernandez's influence on the failing Juan Soto as he sits there at the batting cage and watches a $50 million ball player only hit solo home runs and bat
He's Juan Solo.
246.
It's Juan Solo.
246.
Hey, everybody said last year that this guy
$700 million.
Okay, yeah.
246.
Yeah, okay, right. It's the first year of 16. Buckle up.
First year without Aaron Judge. Okay. 246.
All right, yeah. Great. All right. We done here?
All right.
We're done with this? All right. Listen, this one's over. Everybody go back to bed. We'll everybody go to their neutral corners, and we'll fire this up again next week for the captain.
And you'll have to go. And if you live in a rent-controlled apartment with Mr. Roper, you would have to go to bed before 10 o'clock.
That's last week's episode. Do you have to get final word? Has to be on last week's episode. You can't stand behind your argument. Go get your sideburn shaved. Go cut your hair, hippie. Dirty hippie. I'm hanging out with the guy who's womanizing and smoking lung darts while he's watching mediocre batting practice. All right, let's get out of here. For the captain, this is Mike Madden. We're done. Have yourself a great night, and we'll see you next week.
I'm Keith Hernandez.